Thokozani ebukhosini. Dauwe, shalom, ashe, lisedikhanya. Namaste. Welcome back to my channel, you guys. This is Dr. Tash, and you are on the Naturally Dr. Tash YouTube channel. Remember that on this channel, we talk about medicine, healing, and motivation. Welcome back. I'm very excited to be back making more content, all right, for the YouTube page. All right, in this time, I am getting a lot of spiritual lessons. All right, I'm getting a lot of spiritual lessons and spiritual downloads because we have to remember that as gifted people, right, as spiritually gifted people, we are constantly learning, evolving. We are never just, in one space, all right? Hence, they call it a journey, spiritual journey, for a reason. You're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, and your perspectives on certain things might change, right, as you go throughout the journey. And a journey is a lifetime thing. In today's video, we are going to be talking about Amakhosi spirits, all right, the kings and the queens. We have touched on Istunya, the messenger, right, as a spiritual gift. So today we're going to be talking about Amakhosi and the spiritual gift of Amakhosi. Last year I had a visitation from one of my kingship spirits. All right. She then let me know, right, in the dream that one, she was the brains behind my YouTube channel. All right, and she gave me a clear instruction during that dream. At first, she had said, get to know your parents, right, for the sake of your children. And two, she said, you have to know where you come from and tell people where they actually come from. All right, and I believe that she was a very ancient spirit, all right, because she had her face covered and yeah, nonetheless. But she was definitely a queen. Which leads me to this video, the video of Amakhosi and the Amakhosi spirits. So we have to remember, right, that as Africans, the system that we are living in now and what was back then, right, is totally different. Because back then, which is thousands and thousands of years ago, if not millions of years ago, Africa, right, was run by a system of kingdoms, right? Kingdoms and empires. So the land was run by kings and queens. All right, that's how things were divided. We did not have the system of countries, right, presidents, right? This is a system that came with colonization, slowly started creeping in through the era that they call the scramble of Africa, right, which is when the Europeans were scrambling to colonize African kingdoms. But in ancient Africa, in the ancient civilization, we had our own systems, which were run by the kings and the queens, right? It was an entire system. So you'd have a king and a queen, right? And you'd have leaders, right, under these people, chiefs, etc. But all this knowledge is not known. It is lost, right? As time evolved, as colonization creeped in, right? With colonization came religion, okay, and things changed. All right, so a lot of people don't actually know where it is that they come from, which is not just my generation, but even our parents, grandparents, right? Those generations have lost the essence of where it is that they come from. A lot of people don't know, all right, that they have royal spirits, right? And they come from royalty. As science says, spirit is energy, and energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So as much as we are living in an age where we have forgotten where it is that we come from, we're living in a cycle of self-forgetfulness. There's one thing that will stay constant. It is energy, because it cannot be created nor destroyed, right? It's just simply transferred from one form to another. So the energy that is your spirit, which exists inside your DNA, right, which is in your blood, still remembers, still has genetic memory about where it is that you come from. And now we are living in an age where our ancestors are reminding us about where we come from because we have forgotten, right, as people. Some of us don't even know. Today's video is about Amakhosi, the kings and the queens, the leaders, right, of the world. Amakhosi. How do you know that you have Amakhosi spirits? Firstly, Amakhosi spirits are vast. They are vast, right? And they are different. Right, if you want to look at it from the spiritual context, right, you can have Amakhosi spirits, right, that are linked to the waters. You have Amakhosi spirits, right, that are linked to the mountains and the caves, right? You've got Amakhosi spirits, right, that are linked to the earth. All right, so how do you get to have Amakhosi spirits? So for you to be connected to Amakhosi, you need to be connected, right, one via a bloodline. So somewhere in your lineage there existed kings, queens, chiefs, people who were leaders, right, in their society in those times. Secondly, if it's not via a bloodline, it is also via an association with the royal council, with the royal kingdoms. Your people worked for the royals, all right, back in those days. They worked under the leadership of the kings. They worked under the leadership of the queens. They were the royal healers. They healed, right, the royal people. All right, so that is via association, and you can find that those spirits, right, died there under those kingdoms, under those queens, right, in those times. So Amakhosi, dikgoshi le dikgoshigadi, the characteristics of someone who has Amakhosi spirits: you are a leader, right, within yourself, because this is part of your DNA, this is part of who you are, this is part of your energy field. So when you walk into spaces, the energy and the aura, right, that you carry already speaks leadership around you. One hour Amakhosi, right, when they're in school, they'll be the ones that are gonna get into leadership positions, because that is the aura and the energy that they give off. All right, they are those people. You will be part of the leadership councils of your schools. Amakhosi people, you know, when they get into certain spaces, they are the people, right, that get certain positions in jobs. They'll get the managerial positions, the leadership positions, because that is who they are. It's part of who they are, who they were, right, in the society. Amakhosi people are trendsetters. They are people that will have a following of some sort. When you speak, people listen to you and what you have to say. And when you speak, your voice is heard. This can be very intimidating to some people, because remember, it's your energy and your aura that speaks for you, and you might not necessarily have to do anything, right? But some people can feel intimidated by you for no reason. So in actual fact, you're someone who naturally, you kind of like inspire people, or naturally, you can have the opposite effect. Like, people can be very envious, right, of you, because there's something about you that inside of them, it's like, this person is better than me, right, without you even saying a word. Okay, that's the energy and the aura that you carry. People with Amakhosi spirits, they are secretive, right, because the Amakhosi spirits don't like their business, right, to be out there. So if you carry Amakhosi spirits, all right, and you go to some healers, they will not be able to to read what it is that you have in entirety. They can see on the surface, right? But Amakhosi spirits don't like their plans, don't like their things to be told, to be known by society. Amakhosi are the type of people who are very sort of like stubborn. They don't like to be told, right, what to do. You don't like to be dictated to. Whether you are a man, right, or a woman, right, it's the same. And people can describe you as someone being very stubborn in nature. When you say something and you mean it. If you say it's left, it's left. If you say it's right, it's right. You don't like to be dictated, you don't like to be told. So these type of people, guys, they don't do well under people's leadership, right? They don't do well in certain spaces, they don't do well in certain workspaces, right? Because there's something within you that says, but I'm a leader, and why do I need to be under someone? They won't do well under certain bosses, right? You will always clash with your bosses at work, all right? Or let's say you're someone who with a very introverted personality, people are going to be intimidated by you walking into those workspaces, because there's something about your energy that says, I'm here to rule, right? I'm here to lead. And leading doesn't actually mean lording over people, right? And always imposing your opinions on people. You can have a very humble personality, right? Like me. But we're talking about energy. There's something about your energy that says, right, I'm here to sit on that throne. You understand what I mean? So those are Amakhosi spirits. Batho ba sa batleng go buswa ke batho. They don't want to be lorded over. They don't want to be told what to do. Hence, when you enter the traditional systems, all right, that we know, all right, of healing systems, people with Amakhosi spirits, they guides, it's either they're going to take you out of someone's mpande, that's facts, or there's just something that's going to go wrong, right? Maybe watwasa, and then they tell you, Guti, you're actually not supposed to be there. You receive feedback, right, from your ancestors saying you were not supposed to do a certain thing. Those are Amakhosi spirits, because they have their own ways of doing things, and they have their own ways of working. All right. I will never forget when I was going through my initial stages under a particular mentor, whatever, right? I then got a call, and at this time I was at home. I then got a call from one of the gogos, right, that I was with in Pande, right? Someone's in Pande. And I remember she called me, and we were catching up. Oh, how are you? After everything, blah blah blah. And she said, Gogo, she said, I'm not okay. And I said, what is it? She said, my ancestors are not particularly happy, Gogo. I said, what's wrong? And she said, no, I was not supposed to twasa. And my heart sank, you guys, because this particular gogo is someone, right, I was very close to her. And two, I had attended her homecoming and all of that, and the things that she went through, expected to buy this and that and this and that, and only to find out Uguti, her ancestors are like, no, she was not supposed to twasa. She's like, go kita malidi ngakachube. Makhosi, and I was not supposed to go through that particular way of initiation. So guys, Makhosi, they will have big problems when it comes to typical initiation systems, right? Because they want to do things their own way. They have their own rituals and ways in which they work, right? They don't want to be sort of like bowing down to people, all right, because that's not who they were. They were not into that. And how they'd want you to initiate may be particularly very different. The problem that we are facing with these nowadays initiation schools, Lidi Gobela Tsamatsatia, is one, they are inexperienced, and two, they want to treat everyone the same, whereas we are not the same, right? Spiritually, background wise, where we come from, our family lineages, right? And what you are generally seeing, right, in initiation schools, and I'm here to speak the truth, is that everyone's doing the same thing at the same time. But we all have different lineages, we all have different ancestries. Some of us are Wamakhosi, right? But it just seems like it's a one size fits all, and spirituality is not a one size fits all. That is where you're going to get problems, right, with certain initiates coming back to you and saying, I've gotten feedback from my ancestors and they're saying I was not supposed to particularly do this way of doing things, right? I was not particularly supposed to do this ritual. And there's a very huge problem of uniformity, trying to treat people the same, whereas in those people's ancestors in society were on a different level vibrationally. With my experience, going through my initial stages of initiation, right, or I was with under particular healer, I then met one prophet who said to me, do you know that you were not particularly supposed to be under that person's leadership? And I said, okay. He said, yes. He's like, you guys are not vibrating on the same level. I said, what does that mean? He said, you vibrate higher. And I was very startled. You understand? He's like, you vibrate higher. He's like, your people are the type of people that they don't want to be under someone, right? He's like, so tell me about your experience, right? When you were under this particular mentor. He's like, what happened when they said, Chante okwazele dlozi, right? And I looked at him and I said, nothing happened to me. He said, exactly. He says, because your people, all right, they were leaders, all right, they don't want their business to be out there. Amakosi spirits, right, are the type of spirits, they will not particularly come out and speak and tell their business, right, in a crowd, right? There's nothing that's going to happen to you. They will not come and announce themselves in the typical way. They will not come and give, information about themselves in the typical way. Because one, you will not tell them what to do, right? And two, they don't want to be under a certain leadership because they have their own ways of working. In actual fact, they will eventually tell you what it is that you are supposed to do for your journey. So when you have Amakhosi spirits, right, not knowing, you will go through all of whatever it is that you went through, right, in the beginning, and they'll chill and sit back and say, all right, how was the experience? Did you enjoy it? Okay, are you done now? All right, now listen up. This is what we want you to do. This is the type of initiation that we want you to go through. All right, so Amakhosi spirits, guys, are very unorthodox, like in the way that they work. Very unorthodox. What does that mean? It means that they do not only follow the traditional sense of doing things, of healing. If they send you to a traditional person, a traditional healer, all right, it is because maybe they want you to learn something regarding tradition at that particular point in time. They want you to learn something specific that is going to add on, all right, to your gift, right? But not to say that you're only going to be working in the traditional sense, right, of healing. That is why a lot of people, right, that have these Amakhosi spirits, they are healers, but then o tla bona motho a bula business, right, having herbal shops, right, around the country, because they're very unorthodox, right, in how they work. They will get you to start up businesses. They will get you to start up certain practices. Maybe you could get in a business idea, right, of you actually maybe opening a massage parlor, right, with your herbs, and using your herbal ministry to heal people, right, through massages. They are very unorthodox, okay? Amakosi people are the same type of ancestors, right, that will require you to do the balance, all right, the yin and the yang, the white and the black, understanding traditional systems, right, but also at the same time not limiting yourself to just traditional, but also understanding other forms of spirituality. They are the same type of ancestors, right, that will get you to read the Bible and understand biblical concepts. Maybe they want you to eventually, I don't know, lead a church, right, or whatever, right, but at the same time they will also require you to balance, right? Understanding traditional systems. They might require you to understand herbalism, all right, shamanism, um also, you know, throwing of bones, doing the balance, right, the yin and the yang. So they are very unconventional and unorthodox in the way that they work. There are people with amakosi spirits that don't necessarily have ndumbas, right, because the vision for them is bigger. It's not just limited to traditional things. Maybe they want you to open up a herbal tea shop where your herbal teas are going to heal people. Amakosi spirits are the same type of spirits that will send you to school, right? But then still expect you to learn tradition. Right? It's about the balance, right? They're the same type of ancestors that will get you through to a medical school. At the same time, they want you to understand traditional doctoring. Those are Amakhosi spirits. They are very unorthodox. They do not just work with traditional systems. And you will see that, right, as you move up. Also, how they manifest or how they come about is not in the traditional Unguni way manifestation. They don't like to be manifested out publicly and announce themselves, right? They're very secretive, they're very strategic in the way that they do things. They don't want to be under certain leaderships, they don't want to be under certain people, right? Because most of the time he's piri. If anything, at most, right, out of Amakhosi spirits, they might just give you a name or two, and that's it. Uguti, Babuya, P, and all of that, that is for the initiate, that is for the person who is housing them to know. All right, it is their secret. So if we're actually looking at a chakra system level, they are vibrating high up from the heart chakra upward, from the heart chakra upwards up to the crown. Right, because they operate more on a psyche level. That is where you find psychic mediums, African spiritual mediums. They work a lot with the psyche. Okay, they're very unorthodox. Amakhosi spirits, guys, can use anything. They can use bebeli, they can use crystals, they can use tarot cards to heal, they can use dices, they can use water. It just depends, Uguti. How do your ancestors actually work? So you need to get to know your guides and how it is that they work. They will come and show you, okay, rona re sebetsa ka metsi or re sebetsa ka ditlhare, or you need to balance. You actually have this part and this part together, right? The type of dreams that one will have if you've got the Amakhosi spirits, Amakhosi ancestors, you're going to dream of crowns, right? An actual crown with jewels on it, right? Those are Amakhosi dreams. You're going to dream of staffs that are very unorthodox, right? They'll have certain decorations on them. You will dream of animal parts. Like, okay, I recently dreamed of like a cow hide that had a certain shade on it. All right, cow hides. A certain part of an animal, right? Because remember, back in those days, this is how they used to dress, all right? The kings and the queens, all right? You might dream of cow hides. You might dream of the animals themselves, right? The big five animals. Okay, you're dreaming of lions, you're dreaming of cheetahs, you're dreaming of elephants, okay? The big five, Nji. Right, that's what you are dreaming about. Those are Amakhosi dreams, all right? The Amakhosi spirits. All right, you are dreaming of rhinos, and the animals are not only limited to the big five, but that's the most common, right? You could dream of crocodiles. Those linked to Amakhosi spirits, right, of the waters, right? Crocodiles, bakwena, the jaguar, and so forth. Okay, snakes. All right, there are certain snakes that allude to Amakhosi spirits. But yeah, when you have these Amakhosi spirits, right, you are someone who's vibrating very high. You're not just limited, right, to the earthly things. You're gonna learn a lot of universal concepts as time goes by. They're gonna get you to learn about numerology, right? Because you're always seeing angelic numbers, you know, every day, right? You're seeing angelic numbers every day. That's how they communicate. So you might learn about numerology and become a numerologist, right, within the African spectrum of healing. They will drive you to learn about astrology, placement of the, you know, the stars and the moon. Okay, you're connecting to more universal energies, right? When we talk about Amakhosi, I remember I had a dream of a particular grandfather. In the dream, he was teaching me bones. Hey guys, as spiritual people, ancestors are always teaching. You understand? These classes that you get into, the schools that you get into, all right, you're actually having a spiritual download. So he was teaching me bones. But now, right, while he was teaching me bones in the dream, he was mentioning Indian phrases, okay, and he was saying, you know, this. All right, the last word that I remember is Krishna. Krishna, right? Krishna is an Indian god. All right, an Indian god, an Indian, like an ascended master. Okay, so Amakhosi spirit, you will dream a lot about universal concepts. You will dream about like ascended masters, right? You have some people saying, yo, I dreamed of Jesus as an ascended master. You know, they're the type of people who will drive you to learn about other concepts of religion. So you're not going to just be limited to traditional ways of doing things. They will get you to read the Quran. They will get you into Egyptian mythologies, and they'll get you into reading about, like, you know, the history of Africa. Like, right, they're so unorthodox in how they want you to work, and your gift, your understanding, right, of universal things. They want to see you being an independent person, right, because that is who you were, right, in society. You might work under a certain company, but best believe within that company you will eventually acquire a leadership position. All right, you might feel, you know, the sense to resign, because Amakhosi spirits in J, guys, they don't do well working under people because they want to have their own things. Amakhosi spirits are the type of spirits that want you to have livestock. Ba batla gore o rue ka dilo, because they were those people. They had a lot of cattle, right? They had a lot of livestock. They had sheep, they had cows, they had chickens. Those are Amakhosi concepts. You might be into farming because those are the kings and the queens. They have their own things. You might be required to travel a lot to different countries. As you can imagine, kings and queens traveled a lot, okay? Going from country to country. A lot of your work might be not just in your community, but might be around the world. Okay, you'll have a lot of maybe interactions with different nations because, you know, that's what they used to do. They used to travel. um they even believe in marrying, like how they marry different races within different kingdoms. And if they do choose a person for you, it might not even be from, unquote, the same tribe, right? They believe in marrying different races, different people, interacting with different people. They believe in that. All right, those are Amakhosi people. A lot of these people came across right from the seas and all of that, and they've been traveling right throughout in the ancient world. And another thing is that, you know, as you go out, you get to learn that you thought that you were Soto, but in actual fact, you are linked to the Ndebele tribes, or you're linked to the Kenyan people, or you're linked to the Zambian people, right? Because there's a lot of history that you yourself don't even know, right, about yourself as a person, and where your soul has traveled, where your people have lived in the past, due to colonization, slavery, religion, all of that. Okay, a lot of history has been lost. So you actually just get to find out that, more especially in Africa, we are all interlinked. We are interlinked. We are coming from the same um, ancestries and people. You as an African, you're saying that you are closer, but you don't know, Guti, you have ancestors that lived in Ghana per se, or they lived in Nigeria, right? Because you don't know all your ancestors and where it is that they come from. So Amakosi spirits, guys, are vast, very different, and unorthodox in the way that they carry out their healing work and what it is they want you to learn within this lifetime. All right, so Thokozani Ebukhosini. This is Dr. Tesh. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode of Life is Spiritual. All right, remember this platform is for education. Right, it's for education, right? Educating people about medicine, healing, and motivation. Remember that eating well and living well is a form of self-respect. So respect yourself. Till next time.